Saint Edith of Wilton was an English nun, a daughter of King Edgar of England the Peaceful. She was born at Kemsing, Kent, in 961. Following her death in 984, she became the patron saint of her community at Wilton Abbey in Wiltshire, and churches were dedicated to her in Wiltshire and in other parts of Anglo-Saxon England. Her biography was written by Gisellen and her feast day is on the 16th of September. Life. Edith was the daughter of Edgar, by Wilfrida, a woman of noble birth whom Edgar carried off from the nunnery at Wilton Abbey. He took her to his residence at Kemsing, near Sevenoaks, where Edith was born. Under Dunstan's direction, Edgar did penance for this crime by not wearing his crown for 7 years. Although forms of bride abduction were a traditional part of Anglo-Saxon society, whether Edgar took Wulfrith forcibly is unclear. What we do know is that she stayed with him for at least a year, and that for some time after her return to Wilton, they were on good terms. As soon as Wulfrith could, she returned to Wilton, taking Edith with her. Edgar continued to support the abbey monetarily and with land grants. Edith was educated by the nuns of the abbey, where her mother had become abbess, standing not far from a royal residence at Wilton. The abbey included as part of its devotional work the contemporary equivalent of a boarding school for young ladies, as did many abbeys at the time. As was the custom of the time, Edith probably took the veil in her latter teens. Edgar died in 975, when Edith was about 14. According to legend, in 979, Edith had a dream that she had lost her right eye. She believed that the dream had been sent to warn her of the death of her half-brother Edward, who was indeed murdered at that time whilst on a visit to his stepmother Ælfthryth, at Corfe Castle, in Dorset. Religious texts, and in particular her biography, written by Gisellen, have probably embellished many details of her life for political and dramatic effect. She was likely never offered position as abbess anywhere, since she was only about 14 when Edgar died and would have been a simple novice at Wilton at the time. It is also likely legend that she was ever offered the crown after the death of her brother, Edward the Martyr, since Anglo-Saxon kingship was built upon primogeniture, and would have passed by the female in favour of younger son Ethelred. She was reported to have always dressed magnificently and was reported by the medieval chronicler William of Malmesbury to have worn luxurious, golden garments. When rebuked by Ethelwold of Winchester, she answered that the judgment of God, which alone penetrated through the outward appearance, was alone true and infallible, adding, "For pride may exist under the garb of wretchedness, and a mind may be as pure under these vestments as under your tattered furs." It is known that Abbess Street, Wilfrid, Edith's mother, preferred that all the nuns at Wilton to dress in white habit with gold ornamentation, to the glory of God. What we can know without doubt is that Edgar continued to support Wulfrith and Edith through the abbey, and that Edith made a great impression on those around her during her short life. Edith built her church at Wilton, and dedicated it to St. Denis. St. Dunstan was invited to the dedication and is said to have wept during the Mass. When he was asked why he wept, Dunstan said it was because he knew that Edith would die in 3 weeks. His prediction was proved to be correct when she died on the 15th of September 984. The story suggests that Edith was suffering from a fatal illness. She was buried at Wilton in the newly dedicated church. Sainthood. According to hagiography, Edith was greatly celebrated for her learning, her beauty and her sanctity. Minor miracles were reported shortly after her death. A week after she died, Edith appeared in glory to her mother and told her that the devil had tried to accuse her, but that she had broken his head. The early medieval writer Gisellen reported that 13 years later she appeared in visions to Dunstan and others, to inform them that her body was uncorrupted in the grave. He stated that Dunstan opened her tomb in the presence of her mother, and that its fragrant perfumes gave off the breath of paradise. However, the dating of this event must be doubted, as Dunstan himself died only 4 years after Edith. It has been suggested that Gosselin may have chosen to enhance Edith's story by associating Dunstan with her translation. Following her exhumation and subsequent reburial, Edith's thumb was enshrined separately and became an important relic. She was elevated to sainthood at her mother's instigation, and also upon the initiative of her brother Ethelred, and her cause was supported by her nephew, Edmund Ironside. Edmund's successor, Cnut the Great, was renowned for his veneration of Edith. Gosselin wrote that while Cnut was crossing the North Sea from England to Denmark, his fleet suffered a terrible storm, and fearing for his life, he appealed to Edith. The storm calmed, and on his return to England, Cnut visited Wilton to give thanks for his rescue, with solemn gifts, and published this great miracle with prolific testimony, subsequently ordering a golden shrine to Edith to be erected at the abbey. Edith became the focus of a major cult in Wilton and an important national saint. Gosselin wrote her life, under the title Vita Edith, in about 1080. The community at Wilton, in looking to her as its heavenly patron, remembered her as a royal lady who had been dedicated to its protection. In his Liber Confortatorius, Gosselin wrote that he often thought of Edith and felt her presence. It is known that 3 churches were dedicated to Edith, at Baverstock near Wilton, Bishop Wilton in Yorkshire, and at Limpley Stoke in Wiltshire. In the 16th century, after some 500 years, the third of these churches was rededicated to St. Mary, but the other 2 dedications survive. Another 18 churches in England are dedicated to an unspecified Saint Edith, and it has been suggested that most of these dedications are intended for Edith of Wilton. According to the calendar of the Anglican Church, there are 21 churches dedicated in this name in England, 8 of which are in Lincolnshire, and 3 in Warwickshire. It is now impossible to assign them to their respective saints, especially as 2 were located in the same county. The one whom William of Malmesbury mentions with most honour was Edith of Wilton, whose festival he relates was in his time kept in several parts of the kingdom with great solemnity. Probably the majority, if not all, these churches are named in her honour. Wilton Abbey, which was dedicated to St. Edith and later to her mother Street, Wilfrid as well, is typically described in the later Middle Ages as the Convent of the House and Church of St. Editha of Wilton, or as the Monastery of St. Mary in St. Editha of Wilton. Her feast day is on the 16th of September, the day following the anniversary of her death. It has also been reported as the 15th of September, the anniversary itself. Seal. The seal of Edith has survived. Dated to the period 975 to 984, it contains a portrait of her, showing her standing with one hand raised and the other holding a book. The inscription identifies her as Regal Isadelpha, or Royal Sister, which is taken to be a reference both to her status as a nun and to her being the sister of Edward and Ethelred. The handle of the matrix has a rich acanthus decoration. The seal is the only one surviving from the Anglo-Saxon period which shows this feature. Bibliography. Gosselin, Life of St. Edith, ed. Stephanie Hollis, writing The Wilton Women. Gosselin's Legend of Edith and Liber Confortatorius. O.S. B. St. Editha of Wilton.